Let me ask you a question. Do you like Eula? Actually, better question. What took her so damn long to get another rerun? Crazy to believe that it's been over 400 days since she's been available last. But here we are, and she is finally here. I have been looking forward to building her and doing this video on Eula since Mika came out. But before we can get into anything, I think it's important to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's Eula's release history. Not only has she had the longest time in between reruns, but she also may be the most divisive character in all of Genshin Impact's current history. Is she popular or not? Is she good or not? Is she racist or not? Now that last one, that's not a joke. But we'll get there when we get there. With that though, let's get started with a breakdown of what happened leading to Eula's release, and what happened after. When Eula was first announced, and information began trickling in over time on her playstyle and her kit, people began to quickly lose interest pretty much as soon as it was apparent that she was going to be a physical DPS character. Now, no matter how casual of a player you are, you no doubt have at least heard somewhere that physical damage isn't very good when compared to the rest of the elements. In fact, you may have heard it from yourself after trying a character with a physical build. But we'll address Eula's power level a little bit later, but for now let's just go with the assumptions that Eula would be weak due to her damage type. However, that changed after one moment. And there it is. The single moment that propelled Eula from where she was to being an extremely talked about and even hyped character. Probably not what you were expecting, but it's true. I truly believe that the Sneeze trailer increased Eula's sales by a notable margin all on its own. And as we can see here, her sales are somewhat respectable for their time. Middle of the road overall, but not terrible. And even her later rerun pulling in even more sales, though that may also have something to do with Albedo and his new weapon on the horizon at the time. At any rate, things seem to be looking up for Eula. That is, until she was accused of racism and cancelled on Twitter. Again, I'm not joking. The internet is just kind of weird sometimes. Now, these articles and posts were stemming all from the fact that her family during the previous generations owned slaves, and were basically the most evil people in all of Mondstadt's history. However, those who made these posts and articles clearly didn't do any research, as anyone with an IQ higher than a Ritz cracker can put together she was actively against her family and wanted to be separated from that horrible reputation. This definitely soured the character's reputation a little bit, and may have been a factor in why she went so long with no reruns after her first one, though that is merely speculation. There were most likely many factors that went into that decision. So, then what? Well, about 500 days passed, and that long gap got people questioning if she was ever coming back at all, and it generated a lot of hype when she finally got around the corner, completely blowing away record sales and propelling Eula to the most popular character. Yeah, she didn't do super well, and even when paired with Klee, who got a new skin in the same patch. It turns out that all that waiting didn't exactly build people up for her triumphant return. But she did make Hoyo some money, at least. I am at least happy that she finally got another chance to shine, and I will be using this opportunity to put Eula through her paces and see what we can really do with a real physical carry. Well, without further ado, let's talk about her skills and passives and get started for real now. Normal attack, Favonius Bladework, Adele. Pretty straightforward normal and charged attack here. We're not going to be really taking advantage of her charged attacks, but her normal attack speed is pretty favorable and can do quite a bit of damage. Ice Tide Vortex. Now this is part of the bread and butter of her main kit. You can tap the skill and do a quick swing of cryo damage and creates a stack of Grimheart. when you hold the skill, you will release all stacks of Grimheart and lower enemies' physical resistances and cryo resistance by a corresponding amount based on the number of stacks consumed. Here are the numbers. This stacks up to 2 times, so optimally, you will do 2 tap skills and a hold skill to get maximum damage. Finally, we have her burst. This is the bread and butter of her kit. To simplify this giant brick of text, basically she does a burst of cryo damage, and then over the duration of its effect, she will generate what is called a Lightfall Sword. This will gain stacks as she does normal attacks and her elemental skill. Finally, after the duration of 7 seconds, a massive amount of physical damage will be released based on the number of stacks you were able to accumulate in that time. On average, without Constellations, it is possible to get 13 to 14 stacks. This translates to a lot of damage. This is the numbers. A 725 base is pretty good, but you get an extra 150 almost with every single stack. This is how you get those hundreds of thousands of damage. But what are skills without passives? Let's get into it. These passives only help to bring a already cohesive kit even tighter together. Her first passive, Roiling Rhyme. If 2 stacks of Grimheart, that being the max amount, are consumed upon unleashing her hold skill, a Shattered Lightfall Sword will be created and explode immediately, dealing 50% of the basic physical damage dealt by Lightfall Sword. Basically, you get a nice extra chunk of physical damage after applying the maximum amount of physical resistance shred. Pretty good deal. Her final passive is when Glacial Illumination is cast, that's her burst, the cooldown of Icetide Vortex, her skill, is instantly reset, and she gains a stack of Grimheart. With this, that means that you can do a tap skill into a hold skill for the maximum damage immediately. This allows you to get a very nice and very tight rotation, allowing you to do the maximum number of hits for the maximum number of damage. Now, with that, we have a very cohesive physical damage kit with a pretty solid game plan of building stacks with your skill, using your burst, using the hold skill to increase physical damage, and finally ending with a massive burst of damage from her Lightfall Sword. That Lightfall Sword is Eula's answer to the question, but isn't physical bad? Her solution to the physical problem that Genshin has is power overwhelming. The damage of this burst, even without Constellations, is absolutely massive, and can hit in the hundreds of thousands pretty easily. Actually, that being said, let's quickly talk about her Constellations. Even though she's a 5-star, and Constellations are pretty hard to come by, I think that we should at least mention them. Though I will spend less time on them than, say, like how I did with Xinyan, because they're pretty out of reach for most people. I only want to touch on these very briefly, so I'm going to just give a very brief summary of each important constellation before moving on. Tidal Illusion. Every time she releases her skill, if Grimheart stacks are consumed, her physical damage is increased. Constellation 2. Lowers the cooldown of her hold skill. Constellation 3. Lightfall Swords deal more damage to low health opponents. Constellation 6. Get all the stacks. Seriously, your burst just stacks incredibly fast. This is how you get millions of damage. It's kinda ridiculous. Anyway. So with this whole kit in mind, how does she fare? Honestly, in my experience, not bad actually. She can dish out a lot of damage really quickly that compares and even surpasses many other 5-stars. So why is she so slept on? Why is the consensus that she's so bad and so underwhelming? Well, she does have weaknesses, of course, and I'd be doing you all a disservice if I failed to mention them. Firstly, she's a physical unit. That alone has a lot of implications on its own. Namely, in a game that is structured around elemental reactions, she doesn't really have any that are worthwhile. Think about it. You can't take advantage of melds in any meaningful way. Freeze is good, but you immediately break freeze due to her claymore with shatter, which is a terrible reaction on top of that, and the less we talk about it, the better. And if you want to do serious damage, you are forced to use an electro unit to activate Superconduct. Physical has a real stigma on it for that reason alone. And even with Eula's massive damage to compensate, it doesn't outweigh these cons on their own. Another reason why not everyone may enjoy Eula is that she has a fairly inflexible rotation. What I mean by that is that the order of attacks need to be done in a very specific order if you want to get the maximum damage out of her. This is true for a lot of characters, but in her case, there's no wiggle room. You do it right, or you don't do it at all. I'll go into the rotation shortly before I share a proper showcase with you all, but for now just accept that it's pretty stringent. So her playstyle is stringent, her team comp potential is also very strict, but can turn a lot of people off who might otherwise have liked her. With that, let's talk about artifacts and weapons. So for weapons, I ended up going pretty deep to get her signature weapon, which is of course her best weapon by an absolute mile. But there are a few other options that can hold their own, even compared to such a powerful weapon. Any of the 5-star claymores suit her well, such as Dia's signature weapon or the Wolf's Gravestone. Even the Redhorn is a decent option as just a stat stick. For 4 stars, you can take the premium Battle Pass route and use the Serpent Spine, but a free-to-play friendly weapon such as the Star Silver is a very good option as well. Next, her artifacts. Currently, I'm using a 2-piece Pale Flame with a 2-piece Gladiator set, which gives me a healthy mix of physical damage bonus and attack percentage. I would personally recommend a 4-piece Pale Flame set, as it is literally made for her. But I still can't seem to get the pieces for it, so this is what I got. Here are the stats. Finally, I want to touch on the team that I've been using with Eula. Raiden Shogun for my Electro slot. This can be replaced by any other Electro unit such as Beta or Fischl. Next is my healer, which could be, well, any healer, but I like using Diona for the extra healing, her shield, and her battery potential. But you could also use a second Electro character for this spot, or any other healer. And finally, we have Mika for his physical damage bonus and attack speed buff, which synergizes with Eula extremely well. So with that, I think we've covered everything of note other than her rotation. Everything leading up to her in the rotation is up to you. What buffs you use, what Electro character you use, but outside of that, this is how it goes. Tap skill, activate your burst, tap skill into a series of normal attacks, into your hold skill once that's available, and finally ending on a series of normal attacks until the Lightfall Sword explodes. Simple and to the point. Here is a full demonstration with the whole party taking part. To wrap things up, I'd like to end off with a bit of a showcase showing off how far my Eula has come since I got her at the start of this patch. Enjoy! Honestly, I like Eula a lot. I find her to be a lot of fun to play, she's decently strong, and her explosive damage is really fun to pop off. I put a lot of investment in my Eula to show her in a good light, but if you ended up being one of the few who got Eula on her very rare rerun banner, I hope you're enjoying her. And hopefully this video was helpful on your path to making your Eula pop off. Anyway, that's all from me. Cheers. Oh, and by the way, As a little reminder, I've been streaming here on YouTube fairly regularly. I stream Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and I also have a Discord, which I announce my streams, new videos, and all that sort of stuff. If you have suggestions or just want to come hang out, link is in the description. Anyway, as I said before, cheers. Enjoy the rest of your day.